There are so many in this world that are in the midst of their race and feel lost, unable, broken, confused, exhausted, and without hope. Hurdles and barriers become insurmountable. Today, we hear Jesus promise that the Spirit will be with us, stay and wait with us. We are told that it's the Spirit of truth, the one that helps us to see that there's still a future and that there is hope. Think about all the races in track and field in the Olympics. The 100 meters, the 200 meters, the 400 meters, the 800 meters, the 1500 meters, the 5,000 meters, the 10,000 meters, the 42,195 meters. They all demand different things. They are all different races, but they have the same goal, crossing that finish line. Some races even have hurdles, the 100/110 meters and the 400 meters. Hitting a hurdle and fallen hurdles don't count against the runners unless they run into them on purpose. But the way they are designed, they'll slow you down if you hit them. And some run a race with full-on barriers that do not give or tip over. The 3,000 meter steeplechase. That event consists of 28 fixed barriers and 7 water jumps. It used to be that if you weren't fast enough for this race or not right for that race, you did the steeplechase race. Now it has become a specialized event for their runners. All the races are different challenges. Just making it through some of those races is pretty amazing. But unfortunately, finishing first has become the be-all and end-all ideal. It's a lot like life has become. We take some of the motivational posters that we see just a little too seriously sometimes. We begin to believe that if I finish second, I am just the first loser. It's actually a poster. Therefore, I am a loser. All I've hoped for is over. But let's reframe that. What I wished for didn't happen. That's a distorted reality in life. But seeing a future, seeing that there are other things, other opportunities, other goals, other victories, and other gains, that's hope. And continuing on, that's perseverance. Michael Jordan famously once said, "I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career." That's kind of hard to believe. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I failed over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed. As a sophomore in high school, Michael didn't make the varsity team, and he went home and cried. But seeing a future, coaches that wanted him to develop, building a new reality. He said, whenever I was working out and got tired and figured I ought to stop, I'd close my eyes and see that list in that locker room without my name on it. That usually got me going again, Jordan said. Walter Elliott said, perseverance is not a long race, it is many short races, one after the other. Setting smaller goals and building to bigger ones. Seeing the reason to keep going one more time. That's having hope. Just one more step, one more inch, one more hour, one more day, one more week, continuing on. Sometimes it's very hard to continue on even one more step, one more inch, one more hour. We are all called to run different races in life with different hurdles and different barriers. It says in Hebrews 12, Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin that clings so closely, and let us run with perseverance the race that is set before us, looking to Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith, who for the sake of the joy that was set before him endured the cross, disregarding its shame, and has taken his seat at the right hand of the throne of God. Think of the different Olympic races and how they differ, and how we are called to run our race, the race set before us. We can have perseverance. We can have hope. But thinking about the sports and the Olympics or basketball stars, and in those sports or life that are and those that are at the top of their game, it can seem pretty out of reach to us sometimes. Sometimes in life, just like in sports, our physicality, our bodies, our minds betray us. And despite our desire to keep moving forward, it's just not an option. With running and walking, a torn anterior cruciate ligament can do just that out there on the ball field. Sarah Tuklowski was a walk-on to her college softball team. She had to work very hard. She had worked really hard to get there, but still struggled with hitting. Her team was playing in a game where the winner would go to the NCAA Division II playoffs, and the other team, they would go home. Sarah struggled with confidence and was coming to bat with 2 people on base, and she was in a slump with only 3 hits out of 34 at-bats. Strike 1. Then on the next pitch, she blasted it over the center field fence. It was the first home run of her whole life. And as a senior in college, she was nearing the end of her softball career. Cool story, right? That's a hurdle cleared, a barrier breached. But as she jogged off the homer, she missed first base, and she turned back to touch it, and she tore her anterior cruciate ligament in her knee and went down on the ground. She crawled and touched first base and collapsed. If anyone from her team even touched her, she would be out. If she got a pinch runner, it would have been a single, home run, out. All the official people and coaches were discussing and debating. That's when Central Washington first baseman Mallory Holtman, an opponent, an adversary, asked a simple question. Can I help her? She and the shortstop, Liz Wallace, picked her up and carried her around the bases to touch each one. It would be a contribution to not just a close game, but to a loss for Central Washington. Kindness, compassion, and action for someone else came at the cost of the playoffs. But everyone there that surrounded that field and still on the internet today learned a lesson in integrity and compassion. The stands were filled with tears, they say, as they came down the third baseline toward home. It's hard not to tear up when you see it on the internet years later. Now, I've seen runners turn back before victory at the finish line to help a fallen opponent, just like this. And others in other sports doing the same thing. We call it the peak of sportsmanship. But I think there's something bigger here. This home run did not change me as a person, but it had a huge impact on how I see a moment, Sarah wrote. What I learned from Mallory that day is that we always have the opportunity in every moment to see the bigger picture. And if we can pause in moments like those and make choices based on integrity and kindness, I think we'd see a lot more good in this world." End quote. There are so many in this world that are in the midst of their race and feel lost, unable, broken, confused, exhausted, and without hope. Hurdles and barriers become insurmountable. Today, we hear Jesus promise that the Spirit will be with us, stay and wait with us. We are told that it's the Spirit of truth, the one that helps us to see that there's still a future and that there is hope. When we feel abandoned, scared, or alone, there is this promise that we are not. The thing is that Jesus tells us that the Spirit dwells within us. That's some heavy stuff, because if we are keeping the commandment that Jesus gave us and loving one another, we are staying and waiting, leaving no one behind, alone, forsaken, or defenseless. We begin to carry. We have to realize that the hurdle that a particular hurdle may be no big deal to me or to you, but it may be the fight of someone's life. We are called to the cross, to forgo personal glory when others are in need, even our opponent or our enemy, for the success of so many that are struggling with suicide ideations or non-suicidal self-injury, a health crisis, a mental health crisis, a financial crisis, and so many other of life's struggles. The installation of hope is critical. Why were and why are people so touched when an opponent turns from victory to help? It's because it's so rare, so contrary to the winning and crush your opponent mentality. There's approximately 210 million people who identify as Christians in this country, 63% of our population. Shouldn't that type of thing be old hat? So how can we run a better race? How can we look to Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith, who for the sake of the joy that was set before him endured the cross, disregarding its shame? How can we, like Jesus, instill hope? When we hear the difficult struggles of others, we have to turn off shock, turn off judgment, turn off blame. Things that, unfortunately, the church with the big C has been identified with for far too long. We have to turn on and turn up listening and hearing, loving, welcoming, carrying, clothing, feeding, embracing, standing up for, caring for, action for, empathy, and validations of emotions and life. If we aren't offering all of these things, then who will? That's loving one another. That's keeping and guarding Jesus' commandment. That is cruciform living, life in the cross. That's being who we are called to be and empowered to be. That's living in grace, sacrificial love, mercy, courage, action, and compassion that Jesus showed us in his life and ultimately on the cross. Amen.